choking on my own spit. I'm so sorry. Oh my God.
See, the academic gods, they struck you down.
Like struck my uvula.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash Bubbles Maloney.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week, we take a look back in time to decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, and want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we will provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all the information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, where you play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing tonight?
Gene, this week, it is a film that has great sentimental value to the commissioner. It's something that means a lot. And those commissions and those films are always much more fun, I think, for us to review because there is something important behind the commission. And this week's commissioner, Eric C., wrote in for a very special reason that he's going to share for us. And he wanted to go back to school and have us review the 1986 comedy gold Rodney Dangerfield-led project, Back to School.
Hey, Shat Crew, it's Eric C. I just wanted to leave a short voicemail update in anticipation of my upcoming commission of Back to School. As I say in my long-ass email, I had to go back to school myself. It sucked to change careers in my 40s, but you got to play the hand you're dealt. I got into the program I wanted to. I was one of 38 selected from 300 applicants. My first semester just ended. I kicked ass and I loved it. Everything's finally coming up Millhouse. Only a year and a half left to go, and it's going fast. Anyway, thanks for all the good times. Your podcast helped me stay sane over the last 2 years of nonsense. I'm also super pumped for my next commission of Ninja Scroll to drop. I'll be sure to commission more movies soon, too. Keep up the great work.
Well, Eric, it sounds like things are going really well if you're popping up this many commissions. So kudos to you. And I got to tell you, I've thought so many times about the prospect of going back to school, and it takes guts, man. I'm 42 years old, and if I could do it all over again, I probably would have gone into medicine. I don't like sick people, but I found out that you actually don't have to deal with sick people if you go into certain areas of medicine. I wish someone had told me that as a kid. But the idea of going back in years and years of education and getting the student loans and all that stuff, it's terrifying. It's so much more comfortable to stay in your normal job that you get paid reasonably for and just last out your years until you croak. So thankfully, we got the podcast. If we didn't have this, I don't know what I would do.
No, I agree. And Eric C. and I have had some conversations before. He's written in and shared stories about his father, who was a combat veteran in Vietnam. He was a Huey pilot. So, Eric, I appreciate you, appreciate your father, and appreciate the commission. And it's going to be great. Congratulations on doing well. You are a brave man to do what you've done. And this movie, looking forward. Hopefully, we do it justice for you.
Mm.
Back to School is a 1986 comedy starring Rodney Dangerfield, Keith Gordon, Sally Kellerman, Burt Young, Terry Farrell, William Zabka, Ned Beatty, Sam Kinison, Paxton Whitehead, and Robert Downey Jr. The plot centers on a wealthy but uneducated father who goes to college to show solidarity with his discouraged son, Jason, and learns that he cannot buy an education or happiness. Author Kurt Vonnegut has a cameo as himself, as does the band Oingo Boingo, whose frontman Danny Elfman composed the score for the film. The University of Wisconsin-Madison was used as the backdrop for the movie, and the diving scenes were filmed at the since-demolished Industry Hills Aquatic Club in the City of Industry, California. Before the end credits of this movie, the message "For Estelle, thanks for so much" is shown in dedication to Estelle Endler, one of the executive producers of the film who died during production. She was Rodney Dangerfield's longtime manager who helped him get into such films as Caddyshack. So Big D, Ash, we always ask what your memories are of the film we're covering. Tonight it is Back to School. Big D, let's start with you.
So I honestly cannot remember the first time that I saw this, but I always thought it was funny. I've liked Rodney Dangerfield, I think, since the first time I saw him in Caddyshack. His humor is goofy. It's physical. So as a kid, you can gravitate to it. It's something that you can understand. Him being kind of rude, him being funny, him bumbling around, and the premise of an old guy, as I would have thought back then, going back to college was perfect. And now as an adult, I got to enjoy the other side of Rodney, the sarcasm that everyone he deals with, he is constant, he's powerful, he's funny, and he's one of my favorite comedians of all time.
I just had lunch with my big cousin Pej, who was kind of my inspiration as a kid and got me into all the cool 80s stuff that I was too young to get into. And we sat down, we killed a bottle of Basil Hayden, and we talked about the movies that he loves to watch over and over again. He's one of those people who will just watch like the same 5 movies, and that's it. He doesn't want to watch anything new. He wants to watch this. He wants to watch Worth Winning, like 80s comedies that just stick with you. And I really miss watching these movies together as we did when we were kids. But we still, to this day, I'm in my 40s, he's in his 50s. We reference scenes like the giant sandwich or the triple Lindy at random times. And this rewatch brought back some really good memories. And it was so nice to watch it and then go hang out with him and talk about the movie.
Yeah, I think this is where some of like our age differential comes in, because I think I was a bit like too young in the 80s to ever have seen this. And this is not a movie that my family watched. So the only way I've seen stuff from the early to mid 80s is if my family was super, super into it. And this was not one of them. This is super embarrassing to admit, but the reason I know Rodney Dangerfield well is because of that movie Ladybugs that he was in, where he plays the soccer coach. And the reason why is because, like most girls my age, I was in love with Jonathan Brandis for a hot minute. And that happens to be a Jonathan Brandis film. And I would randomly watch that movie with my middle school friends, and we loved it. And so I knew who he is. I've seen him in his cameos in other movies, but I've never seen a lot of his really big ones other than, of course, Caddyshack, which I've seen. But I've heard good things about this movie. I've heard it was really funny. So I was excited to watch it and finally get to see what a lot of people think is like his best comedy.
Is Ladybug like a modern retelling of Just One of the Guys?
What is Just One of the Guys? I don't know.
Just One of the Guys is this girl who pretends to be a guy. She plays football and she's doing it for like a scholarship. Is Ladybugs isn't it about a boy playing girls soccer?
Yeah, it's kind of like the eventuality of like She's the Man with Channing Tatum and, like a lot of movies like that. But yes, Jonathan Brandis is very pretty, and so he could be a girl.
And let's not forget Natural Born Killers. That's the last time we saw Rodney.
That's true. I forgot about that. And remember, I even talked on that pod, like, I don't know much about him. Like, I'm not really, I don't really know a lot about his comedy. And I loved him in Natural Born Killers. I thought he was spot on in that.
That definitely is a generational divide, because for me, as a kid who was born in 80, if you said name a stand-up comic when I was a kid, you would say Rodney Dangerfield. He was the consummate stand-up comedian before there was a Jerry Seinfeld or anybody else.
See, for me, they'd be like Eddie Murphy. Like you asked me from the 80s, yes. Like I'm thinking, Eddie Murphy in his red jacket.
That I think, Gene, is the way you could tell somebody's age. Ask them who was the main comedian. I would say Richard Pryor or Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, you're ancient.
But I mean, I would say Eddie Murphy too, though. So what does that mean for me?
He aged well.
You're like Dr. Doolittle.
I speak to the animals?
Eddie Murphy. I'm raw and delirious.
No.
Yeah, you're more the actor, Eddie.
Yeah, I mean, like the greatest stand-up comedian for me, like from my growing up, obviously, is Mitch Hedberg. But Eddie Murphy was great from the 80s.
He's a postmodern comedian.
Post.
Let's hit the trailer.
Guess who's getting some class?
I'm going to college.
Rodney Dangerfield's going back to school.
That's what I call marine biology. Hey, boys, here's a couple of pens in case you learn how to write, okay? When I used to dream about going to college. This is the way I always pictured it.
Wait a minute, when did you dream about going to college?
When I used to fall asleep in high school.
Here's a book on sex education.
Let me see that.
The world's oldest living freshman.
They left out the most important thing. Where to get it.
Say it! Say it!
Good teacher. He really seems to care. About what, I have no idea. A little something for the kids, okay? Take that, it's okay, huh?
I don't have any kids.
No, kids, we're here. Get yourself some kids. We're here. Take it all right? What a woman.
She is the teacher.
I know, I like teachers. Do something wrong to make you do it over again. What do you say you and I have dinner tonight?
Actually, I'd like to join you, but I have class tonight.
Why don't you call me sometime when you have no class?
He's not just the big man on campus.
Hey, folks, it's on me. Shakespeare for everyone, okay? You too, honey. Ooh, I'd like to tame your shrew.
He's the wildest man on campus.
Shake it up, baby!
Say when.
Right after this drink.
Rodney Dangerfield, back to school.
Baby. Come on, I'll work it all out.
Thornton Melon, a child of Italian immigrants, returns from school bearing a report card with poor grades. His father warns Thornton, if a man has no education, he's got nothing. As decades pass, Thornton changes his last name to the more Americanized Melon and becomes a self-made corporate giant with a successful chain of plus-size clothing stores. Feeling dejected when his college student son Jason cancels a visit, Thornton returns home to a party hosted by his second wife, Vanessa. Witnessing Vanessa's adultery, Thornton divorces her and asks his bodyguard Lou to drive him up to the college to visit Jason.
So often we compliment films that don't waste our time. And this film uses the opening montage, the exposition to tell us, as you said, Gene, the Maloney and the Melon, the family history and where Thornton came from. And during this open montage, you're seeing his humble beginnings, the years of hard work that he had, and what he had to do to become a success. He is a self-made man. He has pulled it off. And the way he talks to people is the way only wealthy, successful people can. It is the I don't give a shit. It is fuck you money, as they say. Thornton does not care about what people think, what people do. That scene you referenced about the sandwich in his party, he's like, this is my party. I don't care. He is financially successful, but that does not mean he is stuck up. He treats anyone who is a working stiff, whether it's his employees, whether it's the people catering the party, whether it's the police, he treats them with respect. And I think right off the bat, you have to be pulling for this guy because he is the everyman.
Except for when he's mildly racist toward the bartender.
Yes.
Whatever. He said, what? No cerveza? Come on. Who cares?
No, that's not what he said. I think he referred to the guy as like Juan or Jose.
Oh, but
that wasn't his name.
So he got it wrong. Everyone else he knows.
That is not what happened.
Yes.
I'm just imagining Big D walking through life missing like 50% of the racism that's going on around him. When you walk to a guy who just looks Hispanic and refer to him as Juan or Jose.
He said no cerveza? No cerveza?
No.
No, I understand what you're saying. I understand. But in no other time does he say anything. I believe it was an honest mistake.
It's not an honest mistake. It's a joke. He's making a joke.
Yeah, and I'll agree with both of you. I mean, the way that they set him up, I mean, you do like him. He's not pretentious. He's not having this awful money moment like in that movie Arthur that we watched where like I absolutely despised him from the outset. Like I did like him. He's like your every man's man that just happens to hit it big and just happens to fall into money, which I thought was charming. But I had trouble starting from the beginning of this movie when Rodney Dangerfield like first gets on screen because of his eyes. I was super distracted by them like the majority of the movie. And here's the thing, like I'm a big fan of RuPaul's Drag Race. And the RuPaul's Drag Race is one of the best shows on television still. Season 15 premiered Friday. It was fantastic. My brother's in town and we watched the 2-hour premiere. It was amazing. And they talk about something on that show about like hairography, right? Which is like choreography for the hair. And you express emotion through the way that you use your hair. And Dangerfield has like this eyeology because like he does things with his eyeballs that make me so immensely uncomfortable. They're big, they're bulgy. I mean, I'm looking right now. I have on the right-hand side of my screen the poster to this film, and like on that poster, you know, his eyes are terrifying. I thought that this was something he only did when he cracked a joke. Like when he was going to say something funny, he'd make his eyes look like they're going to pop out of his head, like those squishy dolls where you make their eyes shoot out. But it's like he can't help himself and they're constantly big. Like the dude acts with his corneas more than he does anything else. And it didn't freak you guys out?
No, he looks like Earl Sinclair from Dinosaurs.
Ugh.
I love it. It's what makes him so great. The 80s were this wonderful time when our comedians and our rock stars and our cultural icons all looked old and weird. Rodney Dangerfield, ZZ Top, fucking Ronnie James Dio. Like they were cherished more for looking interesting than for looking conventionally attractive. Now what do we have? We got Chris Pratt, Chris Pine, Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth. They're all the same guy.
Okay, no, sir. I'm going to call bullshit on this. I will see your Chris's to the fourth power and raise you an Adam Driver. Like, Adam Driver is a weird looking dude and like he's fantastic. He is not conventionally handsome. Like, there's a lot of them out there like him. That,
he's
like,
the exception to the rule. You're
he's
giving
not
one
your
person.
exception. No, I'm just raising his Chris's to an Adam. I mean, I could find others.
Okay, but listen here. The eyes, that's his surprised look. That's like his punchline. Here in comedies, it doesn't scare me, but in Natural Born Killers, when you add those bug eyes to the lines that are about him telling his daughter to go upstairs and he's going to have sex with her, you mix those eyes with that dialogue in Natural Born Killers, that's uncomfortable. Here, he's just your wacky uncle.
Finn Wolfhard kind of looks like Adam Driver, and Keanu Reeves is kind of in that same zone too. But Adam Driver in those pants that he wore on the Star Wars, that set him apart in my mind forever.
Yeah, he's a weird looking dude, but he looks fantastic. But I don't know. I get that you're saying it's his punchline. I guess, I don't know, maybe if you're born in 83, it's not funny. Like, it's just fucking weird. I was really worried.
Okay, I'll see your Adam Driver and I'll give you Burt Young.
Yes.
Fucking Burt Young.
Yeah.
I love Burt Young.
Yeah.
Most people, if you don't know who I'm talking about, he's Paulie from the Rocky movies. He plays Thornton's driver, Lou, in this movie, and he's a weird looking dude. He looks like something that comes out from a hole in the ground at night. He's somehow cuddly, somewhat intimidating, and he carries like just the touch of that New York Italian mob vibe, which makes sense because he has like a restaurant in the Bronx and he's from the Queens. He always has like scruff and disheveled hair. Like he looks like he wasn't ready for the movie to start shooting. Like they just picked him up that day, but he's balding at the same time. And as you look at him, he shouldn't be intimidating, but something tells you that this 5'8" meatball of a man is a killer. He has the Marine Corps boxing record to back it up. Like this guy was a badass in his day.
This is what Joe Pesci wants to be. He's weathered.
Yes.
He is like an Italian troll. When he goes and when he fights the football team, normally I'd call bullshit. What's this old man going to do? I believe that he could beat up a college football team because he just looks like he's been through the war.
And Thornton needs that bodyguard because, as you said, Big D, he goes around just fucking dropping one-liners all over the place. And think about how many movies we've seen where a stand-up comic tried to transition into film, or when they try to do it even into TV, and they just flop because it's a hard transition to make. But Rodney Dangerfield, he makes it so natural. He shows up in this movie. He starts firing jokes like a comedy tornado flying through each set. He doesn't need a funny sidekick. He doesn't need a movie filled with wacky scenarios. The guy shows up on set and he fucking gets to work. And his matter-of-fact jokes are the best. Like, there's an honesty to just calling big and tall clothing tall and fat.
Yes.
Or looking at, as you said, Big D, that tray of hors d'oeuvres and muttering, I hate small food. That's the joke. That's it.
He's great. And his tagline as a recovering fat guy right now, hey, if you want to look thin, hang around with fat people. It's a great tagline. And you know, what is it now? Big and tall? No, I want tall and fat or big and fat. Be honest in your marketing. And he does it. He's great.
Yeah, and he rattles off the name of like 3 or 4 major actors who were sex symbols who also just were big boys that shopped at his
Orson
store.
Welles. That's the sex symbol. I think of Orson Welles. He was one of his clients.
I will say that I can buy this up to a certain point. I mean, we're about to get further into the movie, but he doesn't need wacky settings. Like, once he gets to the college campus, like, it's a step from like fucking Van Wilder, right? Like, I mean, like, it's a pretty wacky setting that he's finding himself in. And even at the beginning, like, he's okay, but like the shit happening around him is supposed to be wacky and stupid, like that Cabbage Patch fat doll that they bring out at the beginning, right? Like, it isn't the fact that, you know, they're adopted. These have been abandoned. Ha ha ha, yuck yuck. I didn't buy it.
On campus, Thornton learns from Jason that he is a C student and intends to drop out. Jason is a towel boy for the diving team instead of a member, where he is antagonized by teammate Chaz Osborne, and his only friend is his roommate, Derek Lutz. Thornton motivates Jason to stay in college by deciding to enroll alongside him. He bribes his way into college with a donation for a new campus building.
So I like this movie once we get to Jason. I liked a lot of the interaction that he has with his dad. And it reminded me a lot of my own like collegiate experience. And I appreciated that the movie doesn't like kind of draw it out. He gets there and he's like, well, but you're not on the diving team. And he's like, well, I can explain that. And he's like, but you're not in the fraternity. He's like, I can explain that. And he goes, well, explain. He says, well, I lied. You know, I like that we just get right down to it, that he's been lying to his dad. And I lied to my parents constantly when I was in college, and it was super easy because like my mom, she went to college, but she was already married. So it wasn't like your traditional collegiate experience. She was coming home every night. She's raising a kid. So it really wasn't the same thing. And my dad didn't go to college. So when I went and I, you know, had like that traditional like movie version where I move into a dorm and I'm having like that traditional college life, my parents had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. So I lied constantly and I had great grades, but my life looked really different than what they thought my life looked like because they were super religious and I'm not.
Not
at all. And so one day they surprised me to like take me to lunch, and I lived at the Aaron Apartments on campus, and they show up and they were knocking and I thought it was a friend. So I opened the door and I'm like hungover from the night before. Like my boyfriend is like kind of living with me at that point. They've not even met him yet. The house is disgusting. There was somebody passed out half naked in the living room. Like they were so pissed because they realized that my life was nothing like what I had been portraying it as. And my dad cut my weekly allowance in half and it was awful. So I could strangely relate here. And I bought this part of the movie that like you lie to your parents so that you have the experience you want or to make them happy. And I think that obviously Rodney Dangerfield's reaction to that is ridiculous, but you know, the scenario makes sense.
I'm super grateful to have been raised in a Kurdish household, and I'm a proud Kurd, and I wouldn't have had it any other way. But there is one shitty thing about having a Kurdish mom is they have incredible lie detectors. You cannot lie to these women. They always know. I didn't drink until I was 21, and my mom and I have never even acknowledged that sex exists, but there is no way I could ever get away with lying to her. If she had ever asked a question about those things, I would have been in really bad shape. Big D, are you?
Oh, of course I could lie to them. Of course. I was a prolific shoplifter. It was Yeah, of course. I lied to them all the time. Yes. I feel guilty about it, but you know.
See, but I think it's going to make us those lie detectors as parents, because already Ellie or Finn will say something and I'll look at them and go, mm-mm. And like, I have this bullshit meter because all their bullshit is the bullshit I would filter. Like, I know exactly how they're thinking. And Tom did not lie to his parents until he was much older. And so he has a terrible bullshit meter, but I'm like, I see you.
But Ash, let's not oversell this talent. We're not like Columbo here. If kids give details, you know they're lying. If you say like, what did you do today? Nothing. They probably did nothing. But if they tell you exactly what they did and they've thought it out, it is all a lie. I
built a Lego tower out of this and this and this.
Then, you know, we had recess and then we went to Miss Torres's music class. I know she's lying.
Yeah. You got in trouble, didn't you?
Yes,
you were talking during reading.
Exactly. But I've already gushed over Thornton as an exemplary, you know, he is the American dream. He is a success story. He's an accomplished businessman, but I think also he is a successful dad. He has made a lot of money, but it's not come at the expense of Jason. Usually when we see these 80s and 90s movies, they're the workaholic dad. like the Schwarzenegger and Jingle All the Way. The dad who takes his job over the relationship, and they're going to need to mend that relationship in the third act. Here, no, Thornton's a good dude. He loved Jason's mother. She died, and he only remarried because he's lonely. He is a wonderful father. Jason seems to have everything that he wants in the world, anything he asks for, but he's not the typical 80s and 90s spoiled brat. He's not Billy Madison. He's not Ferris Bueller. He does not feel entitled. He is grounded. He wants to earn everything for a living. How refreshing in an 80s movie. And I think that is a direct relationship to how he was raised. Thornton might not be the coolest, but he is a supportive father. And I think he's one of the best that we've seen. And that Jason lied to him. Did he get mad and storm off? Was there some new rift? No, he's happy for him. He says, don't lie to me. We'll figure it out. I'm going to join school. I'm going to do it for you. He is a great dad.
Totally agree with you, Big D. And I found it additionally endearing that the dad who didn't listen to his dad about getting an education, deeply wants his own son to get an education. But at the same time, Thornton doesn't really understand what an education is and why it exists. It's a cute little legacy that, warmed my heart a little bit in an 80s boob comedy. Thornton's bribery and conflicting views on the science of business draw the wrath of Dr. Philip Barbet, dean of the business school. Thornton also develops a romantic interest in Barbet's girlfriend, literature professor Dr. Diane Turner. Meanwhile, Jason begins to attract the interest of Valerie Desmond. Thornton instantly becomes a popular man on campus, and Jason earns a spot on the diving team after Thornton, a former diver himself, convinces the diving coach to reconsider Jason's abilities.
So I really enjoyed the part of the movie when Thornton is getting into his classes and he doesn't really understand how the classes work. And it's something completely different than what he assumes it is. And you get this great scene in his business class and this practicality approach that meets academia theory bullshit. I actually thought was kind of fun and pretty spot on for how academia remains to this day. I think the issue with a lot of higher ed is this: professors stay for a very long time, or potentially their whole career, in the world of theory, and they wait outside the realm of the actual practices of whatever their field of study is. So they get really far removed from how the world actually fucking works. And it shows that they know the theory, but they don't know anything about real world examples. And I don't typically find Rodney Dangerfield funny. I hadn't in this movie up to this point, but his everyman style here, where he's shooting off these truth bombs back at this hoity-toity, stuck up professor. I thought that's where his style really worked there. And he's kind of a dick about it, but the professor, just the ego alone is a giant dicky thing. And I heard this really smart thing the other day on TikTok that was talking about how there's two people who get their PhDs. There's people who want to be lifelong learners, and there's people who get it for their egos. And as someone who has one, I can 100% agree with that. And unfortunately, the second one, I meet a lot more of those lately. And so I loved seeing this guy who clearly got his PhD for the ego just get his knees taken out from underneath him and get, read a fucking riot act in class. It was amazing.
Amen.
Taking you to church, big
Preach
D.
on, girl.
Kind of a dick. Thornton was an absolute asshole in this class. If I were Barbie, I would have kicked him out after the second outburst. Granted, I'm not in college anymore like Eric, but I take classes for Krav Maga, BJJ, off-road riding, and I hang out at the motorcycle shop to learn wrenching tips from other mechanics. And you wouldn't recognize me in those scenarios because I'm not talkative Gene. I shut the fuck up and I listen. And meanwhile, there are other people in classes like Thornton's who keep trying to teach the instructor, which is so fucking stupid because why are you spending money and spending time to be in a class if you think you know better than the teacher?
Gene, you got to cut Thornton a break here. He created Big and Fat. This is a clothing juggernaut. He has the famous clients you've talked about, but he has made it in the real world. And to Ash's point, if you were out there, right, and you were taking a Krav class and some guy came in who had only taught Krav theory, had never sparred, never trained, and told you, Gene, the way that you disarm somebody with a firearm is with your pinky inserting it into, you'd be like, dude, this is bullshit. He's out there bringing up real world facts. He is saying, also he's thinking, I think, I'm paying all this money for this institution to teach my son in this class of kids, and he's teaching them things that don't exist in the real world.
Well, I think that's the key right there. Is like, I love the way that this describes it, that he doesn't really understand what education is because he didn't get this. Like, he's experiencing what his son is getting in this moment. And I think he's realizing the fallacy of it. I think he's, if it was one thing, if he's paying for college and he's attending college and then he turns into an asshole, but he's coming in going, what the fuck? Like, you're supposed to teach him how to be better than me. And I'm telling you, you know nothing.
Big D, to answer your question, I've been in classes where the instructor is full of shit and doesn't know what they're talking about, or they're even teaching something wrong. And that could get somebody killed, honestly.
Yeah.
And I still quietly listen. I do it exactly as they show me to do, even if I know it's wrong. And then afterward, I talk mad shit when I'm out of class.
See, that's terrible. Call him out in a moment. That's so stupid.
But here's the thing. Thornton spent the majority of his life being the only voice in the room. Now, you combine that with Ash's point, he doesn't know how a classroom works. He might think it's open discussion, that everybody just talks. He's not trying to make the professor. He's not trying to make Philip look bad. He's bringing up legitimate questions. He says, hey, what about the unions? What about local politicians? What about zoning changes, kickbacks, the Teamsters, building inspections, waste disposal? These are legitimate questions.
You don't think he's trying to make Barbie look bad? He refers to the theory that he's describing as Fantasyland.
Oh, that's the last thing he says.
It's an attack.
Yeah, because Philip belittled him. He said, oh, you'll be quiet. You don't know anything. Like, he was putting down Thornton.
Listen, I'm pissed at the MAGA movement for countless reasons, but one that comes to mind is the weaponization of anti-intellectualism, which is what this movie is playing on, right? Every time I see a movie like Back to School, it reminds me that there was a time where we could laugh at this. We could laugh at eggheads and the stuffy gatekeepers of academia, as Ash has described. That was just harmless fun. And we understood that, yes, in fact, we do need experts in fields to make things better for everyone. But that joke, it's not funny anymore. It's turned into a cancer in the past decade, to the point that science is viewed as the enemy and good old common sense is allowed to trump, no pun intended, evidence-based findings. This is dangerous.
It used to be in the past that there was a cost, to become an expert. There was some kind of an investment, whether it was years of research, years of work, to become someone who is respected as a voice with knowledge. But today with the internet, you don't need anything. The cost of admission into the world of experts, every moron today with the internet becomes an expert. So yeah, I think it's sad the way we've become.
So if there's a professor in a class and they're talking about the spectrum of sexual identity or something, right? And there's a guy that comes into class, he's like, I've been out in the world and I've fucked all kinds of things. There's dicks and there's pussies, and that's it.
No, if you were in my class right now, I would explain to you the fallacy of that argument, because that argument is terrible, sir, because we're talking about something totally different here. Now, I will get on board with you about the anti-intellectualism thing, and I think the problem is to Big D's point, is that there's this dilution, right? It used to take 12 years to get a PhD, and now they've got these programs so you can get them in 2 or 3, and people don't wait like where you get the fucking degree from. They just look at the piece of paper. So, I mean, I will be on board with you about that. But I think that there's a difference. It's a difference if you're in the class, and there are 2 types of experts. There are experts in research and theory, and there are experts in practical approaches. That's why you have your practicum teachers. You have your professors that are like clinical, and you have your professors who are research. And your clinical professors are supposed to have that practical experience. This dude is not a clinical professor. This is a tenured asshole who has research and who thinks he knows better than everybody else, but he's never fucking run a business because he has tenure. He doesn't need it.
Yes.
Okay, but poor Dr. Barbie is sitting there trying to discuss building a factory and buying it. And Thornton changes it and saying it's better to lease it. But maybe that wasn't the lesson for the day. Maybe the lesson was, if you wanted to build a factory and purchase the land and construct it yourself, these are the factors that go into play.
Yeah, but any good theoretical teacher would take that then and then flip it and begin to build on that. He's just a shitty teacher.
But I think also he's threatened. Philip can tell that Diane has some interest in him. So I think he's threatened. He already tells him, you're going to fail the class before he's even gotten in there.
Maybe he's threatened because Thornton threw a shovel full of dirt in his face.
Oh, that was inadvertent.
That I would get in there with Gina and say, yes, that was not okay.
Okay, but Ash, I got a question for you here.
Okay.
Is Diane out of line? Because to me, she seems, when she's socially fraternizing with Thornton, is this like an academic conflict of interest? Because Diane's openness, it shocked me. I thought, even though everybody here is an adult and she's proud, she's going to tell everybody, I want to enjoy love. I want to have fun which leads her to date Philip and him simultaneously. But as a student, even being an adult, is this inappropriate in college?
I think it depends on fraternization, right? Like, so there's a politics and education class that I teach that, like, I invite when there's debates, like the whole class over to the house, like to watch these things. And we, you know, have drinks and eat and things of that nature. But, you know, have sex with him? No, because then you get into a power struggle. I don't think there's anything wrong with Diane having sex with him afterwards. But when you're grading somebody, there's a whole power distribution there that gets really fucked up, even in higher ed. It's not okay.
Normally, I side with women characters in most 80s movies because they're generally put upon. But in Back to School, there are some seriously shitty love interests. Valerie, who Jason likes, she is dumb and uninteresting. I don't understand what Jason sees in her. Diane, she's a fucking hypocrite. She preaches free-spirited romance and openly tells Thornton that she's dating Dr. Barbe.
Yeah.
Then she gets butthurt when she walks in on Thornton hot tub snorkeling with a bunch of bikini babes. He wasn't fucking anyone. This guy was having a party. Other people were present in the room. He wasn't doing anything unsavory. He was having a good time. It's not even like cheating, even if they were in a relationship.
But I think this is the equal to what Philip was doing. That Philip does not have real world expertise. He's theoretical. I think she preaches about openness and love, and she's bullshit. She can't actually practice it. When she is the apex female at the university that all the other tenured professors want, she can have her pick. Here, you introduce some young, attractive women. All of a sudden, she feels insecure about her aging body. You know, I think that's it. And I love that the hot tub girl, yeah, it's inappropriate, makes Thornton look bad, but I like poetry. Well, maybe you could help me straighten out my Longfellow. That shit was funny.
That's what I call marine biology.
Yes, come on.
It's not funny. It's just like, even when y'all, usually, like, I find it funnier when y'all do it, when y'all repeat the lines, but
you don't have a dick.
You cannot claim that the reason I don't think it's funny is because I don't have a dick.
I get one dick card.
Yeah.
You actually used your dick card like an episode ago. You're like, I finally, after all these movies, can use my dick card.
Castration, yeah.
Per episode.
No, bullshit.
No, but look, there's an innocentness to it. He's saying it, but he doesn't necessarily mean it.
Yes.
It's like I said, that kids, when they're around adults who don't act the way they expect, the kids are like on uneven ground. It just shakes their world. These college kids are just like, they don't know what to think of him, but they know he's not being mean or manipulative.
Totally agree. In the scene where he and Lou are at the bar and they call the women over to have a pitcher of beer with them, I don't think he intended to fuck either of those women.
No.
He's just hanging out. He's having a good time.
Totally.
Yeah, I don't think he's a bad dude, and I don't think his Longfellow comment was meant to be like a sexually harassing comment. I just don't think it's funny.
But let's not forget, Diane's a hypocrite, Gene. Diane, you're 100% correct. Diane should shut the fuck up and practice what she preaches. Free love, let Thornton get his groove on. You just better shut up.
Wow.
She pissed me off right there. Manipulative.
I feel like there's something in your past that's like triggering that. Do we want to?
Yeah. What happened there?
This is a safe space, Vic D. What do you want to share with us?
I think Thornton was a good dude, and she was manipulating him, and then I thought she should just take it.
Yeah.
She didn't actually get mad. Maybe she just got her feelings hurt. You can't control your feelings. Maybe she just discovered that she was wrong.
Okay. I'll accept that.
Well, we've talked a lot about Diane and Thornton. I want to talk about these other 80s staples that are in this movie, because if it's an 80s movie, it's got to have a bully of some kind, right? And it's got to have a random person that became really famous. And for this, it's Robert Downey Jr. Like, I had no clue that he was going to be in this movie. And y'all, he was incredible. His hair was fantastic. I love how smart ass he is. Like, when Thornton asks him when he first meets him and he's like, is that your real hair? He's like, what do you think? Right? Like, the way he delivers like smart ass lines like that, he was fantastic at it even back then. But also, who knew fucking Johnny Lawrence was in this? And of course he's playing a bully. Apparently he could play nothing but a bully. And of course he's not great in it, just like in Karate Kid. And here's the thing, before we get any haters, I love Cobra Kai. I think Cobra Kai is such a fun series. It's such a fun little like nostalgia porn moment. And I think that Johnny is great in Cobra Kai. I think at some point over the last 40 years, he's gotten acting lessons. But the truth is, back in the 80s, he was terrible. maybe it isn't wholly his fault in this film because he's got some shitty lines, y'all. Maybe some of the worst bully lines that I have ever heard. The worst potentially being, "I won't forget this. I'll see you at the pool." Like, there is nothing intimidating about that, especially when you add to it that he's got a skinny tie that is blue and black checkered with like a lizard on it.
I think it's intentional. I don't think 80s bullies were meant to be intimidating. Like, these movies were made for nerds. So the bullies had to be sort of silly. So nerds like me could watch the movie and go, "Oh, that guy isn't cool." Case in point, my favorite 80s bully was Roy Stalin in Better Off Dead. And he's absolutely ridiculous. He's so weird in his own way. He's weirder than the people he's making fun of, but he doesn't even realize it. And Adam Sandler does a great job of like in Happy Gilmore, right? Shooter McGavin is the bully, and he's so ridiculous. It's playing on that same 80s formula.
I agree. I think as the nerd, you view the popular kid with the girlfriends and the football team as perfect. So you needed to see the other side of the flaws that they had. And by making these bullies quirky and have like flaws that were bigger than anybody else, exposing them, I think gave nerd kids hope that they weren't alone.
So this movie was partly filmed in Madison, Wisconsin. That's a fantastic college town. Like, that is to me what a college town should be. Halloween in Madison is absolutely amazing. I live in Tempe, massive college town, and it was just named most popular college town in America for the second straight year. I don't get it. I don't know why. Madison is better. Ann Arbor is better. New Orleans is better. Cambridge is better. Tempe used to be cool. It used to have real college bars like you see in this movie, but now it's all chain restaurants and nightclubs. And I miss those days. College towns need to have bars like we see in Back to School. They need to have bad cover bands and cheap beer by the pitcher. You don't see that anymore. No windows. And I think all that's left in Tempe that fits the bill, and this is just a sort of fuzzy match, would be like Devil's Advocate, maybe Casey Moore's and Yucca. And I'm not convinced they'll be around in another 10 years.
No, so I'm going to turn into old man screaming at clouds at this point, and I don't really care. I think it's social media, and then as a result of that, lawyers that have ruined all the fun. Because back in the day, you could have a bar that was a dirty hole in the wall that let kids in with fake IDs. People get drunk. There'd be an occasional fight. Now, social media, everything is out there. People are looking for that gotcha moment. I couldn't have, like I did in college, where we'd go get 30 kegs and put people in the backyard. As soon as people started socially publishing that, lawyers could get involved. It just becomes messy with the police. So I think almost those days are gone where kids could act crazy, where the bars could let people in, where the real world just wasn't looking to gotcha and close you down.
I'd like to give a shout out to The Boot, which is still a fantastic college bar that neighbors both Tulane and Loyola's campus right there on Broadway. The Boot is still in existence. They still have quarter pitcher nights. They still have, where you can get a burger for like $7.50 with fries. They still have a fantastic Boot pizza right next door, which is disgusting and greasy, but is like $1.50 a slice. It still exists. And I can tell you that they still hold classes at the Boot. We had this alcoholic philosophy professor who about 3 times a week would say, "You know what, let's just meet at the Boot." And we would go and we would drink. And so they still exist.
I think it has a lot to do with the character of the university itself. So I would say that like a Tulane or a Loyola, those are people who appreciate New Orleans as a city, and therefore a bar like that would appeal to them. I think in Arizona, specifically in Tempe, there's like elevated expectations. Like bars that I go to that I think are kind of nice are referred to as dive bars by these kids. I'm like, that's not a dive, that's the Yucca Tap Room.
Yes. And I will attest. I will give you my sermon here on the Yucca Tap Room. Gene took me there. It was the first place I met him after our 2-year romance online doing this podcast. When I actually met him, it was about 5 a.m. for an Arsenal match. So I walk into what looks like a strip mall with like a speakeasy door. I walk in it, and it's filled with a bunch of, soccer nerds in their Arsenal gear. And then connected to it is like a bar where there was maybe 30 people at 5 a.m. sitting, drinking cocktails and smoking. On the other side of the bar is a retro, like vintage arcade. And I said to Gene, have these people been drinking here all night? because they weren't drunk. They weren't rowdy. They were just locals who came in at 5 a.m. for a smoke, a beer, and just to sit there. And they got a great breakfast burrito. If you're out there, you should go check them out.
Thornton hires a team of professionals to complete his assignments, including author Kurt Vonnegut to write a paper on Kurt Vonnegut for literature class. To Thornton's surprise, Diane gives the paper a failing grade for obviously not being his own work. Jason is also upset with Thornton for trivializing education while mistakenly believing Thornton bribed the diving coach. Dr. Barbay challenges Thornton to an oral examination conducted by all of his professors, facing expulsion if he fails any part of it. Jason encourages his dad to stay in school and prepare for the challenge.
So, Gene, you mentioned it earlier on. I hated every single part of Jason and Valerie's, I'm going to call it romance. I don't know that there really was much of it. I felt it was boring. It was unearned. I kept thinking it was the same girl. It looks like the same girl from Christine. And the two of them in the scenes together, you had Bad Boy, just like in Christine, the relationship became strained, but they are different actors and there's zero chemistry on screen. And just for her at the end to be like, I love you too. It made me cringe. It was as awkward as watching Keith Gordon, the actor, have to get on his tippy toes to try to kiss this girl on the mouth who is at least 6 inches taller than he is.
I was kind of hoping that Jason would fall for Lutz or something because he was at least interesting and loyal. This woman, she self-professes to being stupid. She's like, I don't understand any of this, Jason. You're so smart. I'm dumb. And he's like, you're not dumb. No, she is dumb.
No, we're dumb. Why did she fall in love with him? She all of a sudden saw the dad and the money he has. All of a sudden, he's become, somebody who you'd want to get attached to. She's dumb enough to be brilliant. So dumb. But this whole part of the film, it's where it started to lose me. It opens up. The first, 2/3, I'm on it. I love watching him stumble around. We're with him. But when they get to an arc where Thornton's going to have his redemption arc, they're going to come bring the film home. And it kind of lost me. When he goes from being the hard worker, that is the cornerstone that he tells Jason, hard work, you can be anything. And for him to betray his life mantra and to all of a sudden call in these experts and cheat, to me, it was a betrayal of the character. There's nothing that we've seen in Thornton's life that would lead me to believe he would take the easy way out. I think the only one who took the easy way out were the writers when they were trying to figure out a way to, Thornton starts to struggle and then he starts to, what would he do? Oh, he would get experts. They did it for comedy gold, but that's not what the character would do.
Initially, I was kind of blindsided by this, but it actually makes sense because if you think about Thornton, he's smart. He's like street smart though, right? And so when you look at the way he does business, he knows how to shuffle things around to extract profit. He's not necessarily doing the hardest way to do it. He's doing the easiest way, the path of least resistance. So if you think about the most efficient way for him to take care of school would be to employ a team that would take care of school for him. He's outsourcing the work. That's business genius.
He makes pretty clear in other parts of this movie, like with his Longfellow comment, right, that he doesn't, place a whole lot of stock in the liberal arts part of this education. So it's not like he's cheating on his finance final or he's cheating on his business final. Like he's cheating, with literature. It makes sense to me that he would look at that. And it brings up an interesting point, right? What is plagiarism? I think he would see I paid somebody, that's their words. I bought those words. So technically I own those words because he's a businessman. So I don't think he sees it as this nefarious cheating the way that it's tried to be portrayed. And especially the way that Diane flips out about it.
Big D, I'm going to hit you with a hard truth.
Ooh, bring it.
Elon Musk has never built a single Tesla.
Okay.
With limited time to prepare, Thornton crams for the examination. When the big day comes, Barbay begins by intimidating Thornton with questions, but Diane inspires him to finish. At the championship dive meet later that day, Thornton and Jason reconcile. To spite Jason, Chaz fakes a cramp to make his team lose. The coach replaces him with Thornton, who helps the team win by performing the legendary triple Lindy dive. Afterward, Thornton learns from Diane that he has passed the examination, and he gives the commencement speech advising the new graduates to move back in with their parents.
Let's talk about the end to this movie, because this movie seriously stumbles toward the finish line. It's like, come on. And I was okay with it. I was like on board with it. I'm like, okay, it's like 2.5 wipes. It's whatever. And then the fucking ending takes place and this dive takes place. And I want to talk about Chaz for a second, because y'all are talking about like the writers. Big D, you're calling him out like, well, maybe the writers just like threw this in there, right? Well, maybe the writers just threw this Chaz thing in there so they could get Rodney Dangerfield in some sort of swimsuit to get a stunt double that looks nothing like him to bounce on diving boards repeatedly.
Brilliant.
Because how does it hurt Jason for you here, Chaz, if your whole team loses? It's not like individual enough. It's not like direct enough. And I get it. Like, take him out showgirl style, right? Like, put pearls on the diving board. That makes sense to me. But it doesn't make sense to just attack Jason by attacking the whole team. And Chaz, you attack yourself too, because now you've lost.
Ash, I've seen this movie more than 30 times, and that never occurred to me. If they lose, they're going to be like, Jason, that was a great dive. Too bad we lost because of Chaz.
Right.
Yeah, but I think it's because the introduction, as he's climbing up the diving board the first time, they're like, oh, state champion, oh, this and that. When he fails, I think that shakes his security, his confidence. He knows that he needs to pull off a big dive. And if he fails again, that would be a failure that he can't accept. But again, it's the writers. We need to get Rodney on a diving board. So everything else is just lampshading, just getting Rodney on that diving board.
While we're on the topic of motivation, why does Thornton care about getting good grades in college? Like, he's trying really hard. I get it. But from the get-go, he wouldn't go for letter grades. If you're just there to support your son, you would go pass, fail, do everything as an elective.
Audit. You just audit.
Yeah, audit the classes. What the fuck are you doing, dude? Clearly, he's not that smart. Well, now's the time in the podcast where we give our wipe scores for Back to School. The wipe score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie takes to get off respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is pulling off a triple Lindy with 0 practice at 65 years old. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster movie. It is being so dumb that you think Kurt Vonnegut is hard to understand. Ash, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for Back to School?
First of all, I just want to make sure it's stated that Kurt Vonnegut is amazing. And I love the fact that Kurt Vonnegut was randomly in this movie. Here's the thing. This movie was fine. It was okay. I didn't laugh much. And that was my biggest issue, is that this is a comedy and I didn't laugh. It was a cute story. And I think Thornton learns something, which is nice. He has a lesson that makes sense. But I think college stories are really hard because they can feel so unrealistic so quickly. So unless you're going like insane, like parody, like Animal House, then I think it's really difficult to make these immensely funny films. And it was okay. But I was hoping that through our episode, a lot of times you guys make me like feel like my wipe score is too harsh and like I'll back it up. And I just still just think it's worse than average for me. It's not horrible. It's not, as bad as some of the recent films we've looked at, but I think it's a little bit worse than 2.5, which is average. So I'm going to go with what is going to feel, now that I'm looking at your wipe scores in front of me on the screen, fairly harsh, but I'm going to stick to my guns here and say, for this 1983 baby, seeing it for the first time, it is 3 wipes.
Honestly, I was getting kind of tired of us agreeing on all the wipe scores, so this is refreshing.
You're welcome.
I think this is Rodney Dangerfield's best movie.
Yeah.
It certainly isn't flawless, but it's his best movie. The ending feels a bit tacked on. I don't know what the commencement speech was all about. And then he's like doing the freeze frame, like with the thumbs up and the, some of the gags don't work, but Back to School is an underappreciated gem against some really overrated 80s college comedies. Like, people talk about Revenge of the Nerds. They talk about Animal House, and Animal House is decent. Revenge of the Nerds, not so much. But Back to School can hold its own against those movies, and I say it's even better than those movies. So for me, it's 1.5 wipes.
So, Gene, I had an old man moment there at the end, the freeze frame and the commencement speech. I got all excited. I was waiting for him to say, "We're all going to get laid." And then I realized wrong movie. Was Caddyshack. I was expecting that. But, Gene, I agree. It's his best performance. I think it's a strong start. The first 2/3 of the movie are fun to go along the ride with him. He's funny. He's good-hearted. And here's the difference. Most 80s and 90s comedies, like they're mean-spirited a lot of times. The bullies are mean. Here, it's a diving bully. What's the meanest thing he does to him? Hey, take my towel. There's no physical abuse. There's no sex with farm animals like in Revenge of the Nerds.
I love Revenge of the Nerds.
It is an innocent, good-hearted. Thornton is an example for the kids of today. Hard work. You can accomplish anything. Build it with your own two hands and screw those stuffy academics like Philip. They don't know what they're talking about. So for me, this is better than Gene's score. I think this is 1.25 wipes. It put a smile on my face, and it really was nice to go back. And I'm glad, Eric, thank you for having us commission it.
All right, with 3 wipes from Ash, 1.5 wipes from me, and 1.25 wipes from Big D Dick Ebert, that gives us an average wipe score of 1.916 repeating wipes for back to school.
So Gene, with a wipe score of 1.916 repeating wipes, that now ties us in the 128 spot with only one film. Detroit Rock City. Slightly better than Purple Rain, Tombstone, and Beverly Hills Cop. Slightly worse than Cannonball Run, Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, and Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
Cannonball Run was just boosted by a kick-ass theme song. Oingo Boingo's fantastic, but they got nothing on Ray Stevens.
Agreed.
Well, thank you, Eric, for your commission. I hope we did it justice, and it motivates you to keep going strong and kicking ass in college. And we have a voicemail this week from our old friend Paul in Middlesbrough.
There, gang. It's Paul from Middlesbrough again. I'll try and keep it brief. I think I owe a couple of apologies on the last message I sent. First of all, when Big D says cut us some slack, then you have to cut some slack. I'm not messing with Big D, not a chance. So when I complained about the Usual Suspects score, you're right, 2.17 average wipes isn't too bad, although in my opinion it was a 0.5 wipe film for me. I think I just remember the review itself. Yes, Big D and Gene, I think, absolutely battered it during the review. But then the score itself's not too bad. But I remember looking at the list and seeing that the likes of Jacob's Ladder, fucking Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, all ahead of it, and Under Siege with Steven Seagal. Any film with him in ahead of that is unfucking believable for me. He is absolutely shite. Although I wouldn't tell him to his face, it would be from a long fucking distance away. But yeah, if you want some slack, Big D, you've got it. I cut you some slack. It's not the worst score in the world, but some of those films above it shouldn't be above it, in my opinion. But opinions are like arseholes. We've all got one, and some spout more shit than others. So that's that. The other thing is, I felt a complete dumbass for not realising that Ashley was the only one with the metaphorically biggest bollocks out of you all for using her real name. I had no idea these were pseudonyms you were using or fake names, whichever way you want to put it. But yeah, so I felt a complete dumbass when you explained that. But love the show as usual. Love listening to you. Love talking to you. Love chatting to Gene on Instagram. And I wish you all the best and an absolutely cracking Christmas for you all. Up the borough, up the rising, and up the Shat the movies. You're all absolute legends. And of course, love your Ash. If anyone gives you any shit on iTunes, I'll sort them out. And I'm sure Big D would certainly sort them out. Or Gene would use some of his Krav Maga to give them a good hiding. So that's what we like. Take care, all of you. And as I say, have a cracking Christmas and a cracking New Year. I will be commissioning shortly.
Thank you very much for the call. I beg, go back and watch Under Siege. It was making me smile, and I had to pull this up.
Get my pies out of the oven!
Yeah, so good!
Go tell the captain he's spitting my soup!
So good!
Right back, you got a fire in here! Get my pies
To
out of the
hear
oven!
Steven Seagal complaining about they put my pies in the oven.
Get my pies out of the oven.
So good. So good.
Paul, thank you so much for your voicemail. I have a little care package that I just put together for you with Sarah, and so we'll be shipping that out shortly. So keep an eye out there. I don't know how secure mail is in the UK, but we have porch pirates here in the US, so definitely keep an eye out. Thank you so much for calling in.
Well, let me say, the reason I'm crazy with my name is because the fact this wasn't supposed to last this long. Big D called me and I talked to him in my driveway for like an hour about doing 1 to 2 episodes of Westworld, the podcast with you guys. And so I recorded with Gene and with Roger at the time. They asked me to do another one and the Big D couldn't do it. And so I went up on a whole season. And so fuck it, here we are 3 years later. I just had my 3-year anniversary. It was like a week ago. Woo. Thanks guys for remembering.
Well, I think you lured us in. You told us about, listening to us in the birthing room, and I think that kind of opened the door. So.
Listening to you guys while I had Ellie. I did. We were, well, not like during the pushing, but like, during the contraction part. So, yeah, I did. It was, you guys are special to me. 3 years.
Yeah, I think now you are. I think I got to go back and check the number. I think you're now the longest. The
longest what? You going to call me a guest host? Is that what was about to happen?
Female expert, not guest host, resident female expert.
I'm definitely the longest resident female expert.
Yes.
Well, if you'd like to leave us a voicemail, please go to shatpod.com and use the SpeakPipe feature on any device. Leave us a voicemail. We'd love to hear from you. We got many more coming in the coming weeks. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, next week is a film that I can remember discussing with my 5th grade friends. And they said, it's on TV tonight. And we all ran home to watch the TV version of this film. It gives me goosebumps. I watched it yesterday. I felt motivated. I was screaming. So next week, folks, Flash and Dale, they're skyjacked aboard Dr. Zurkov's rocket ship. The trio are drawn into the influence of the planet Mongo, controlled by Ming, who has been testing the Earth with unnatural disasters. Commissioned by Sean V. Came out in 1980. And this movie's got one of those soundtracks that makes me scream, fuck yeah.
Well, thank you, Eric. Thank you, Sean, for your commissions. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all that information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series, including Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all the information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, where everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review, or Paul will come and get you. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next time for the following movie.
What plaything can you offer me today? The planet Earth.
What's happening?
It's an attack.
Pathetic earthlings. Who can save you now?
Flash! They'll kill you!
Let's all team up and fight him. Prepare for torture!
I want him.
Stop at nothing.
Flash, I love you! But we only have 14 hours to save the Earth.
Flash Gordon is still alive.
Gordon's alive? Die! Yes! Must be my lucky day.